All right, so this video, we're going to talk about constant of proportionality and how we can find the constant of proportionality in a situation where we're given words, a representation using a graph, representation using a table, and a representation using an equation. So let's talk about what this really means when we hear the word constant of proportionality. So we actually have a different term we use for it. They are interchangeable, meaning we can use either one, and it really is referring to the same thing. And that term is unit rate. We've used that in class before. And when we're talking about the unit rate, it's talking about when we are given a rate, when one of the quantities in that rate is 1, that specifically is our unit rate. And we'll look a little bit more about that in our second example and second situation. So let's take a look at this first situation. We're looking at a sloth can travel 6 feet every minute. So this right here, that 6 feet every minute, is really our constant of proportionality, or our unit rate. So that's our information right there. We can see it in the situation itself this time. We're not always given the unit rate or the constant of proportionality in the situation. So it's helpful to know how to identify them in a table, in a graph, and in an equation. So if we look closely at the graph here, the way I identify it is I like to look at the x-axis first. That's one of the ways we can look at it, and I look for where the value is 1. Once I figure that value out, it's 1 right here, I follow it up to where the red line on this graph is crossing the 1, and I'm going to circle that point right there. So that point for us is really the value of 1, 6, where this 6 right here is showing us our unit rate. Okay, because it's still representing this very first situation that we have in words right here. The next place we can look and also identify a constant of proportionality or unit rate is in a table. So in this table, I'm again looking for the time, and it's when the time is 1 minute, my distance is 6 feet. This right here would be my constant of proportionality or my unit rate. Again, those two words are interchangeable. We can use either of them to describe the same thing, which would be the 6 feet for every minute. The last place we identify it is in the equation. Well, in this equation, we only have one number, and that number would be 6, which that is our unit rate. And you will always see the unit rate in our proportional relationships in the equation. That's the number that we can always scale up or scale down by to figure out one of the variables. So that's our first example here. We talked about this in class today. We also looked at this problem, right here. And we're going to look at just task number 1 with the table. In this problem, the reason I wanted to look at it is because we're given the rate instead of a unit rate. So if we look at this, it says Kennedy earns $4.23 for each half hour that he works. How much money does he earn during a given amount of time? So when we look at this, I've filled out a few pieces of information here. I want to figure out for 1 hour how much does Kennedy make or Kennedy earn. So I'm looking, I see the 1 shows up right here, meaning this is actually my unit rate or my constant of proportionality. Because when we talk about it, we want to see for 1 hour. I can now use this constant of proportionality to figure out any other amount. For example, I determined for 2 hours he worked 16 minutes, or he earned $16.92 by just multiplying 8.46 or $8.46 by 2. That would work for any of the other ones. I can take that unit rate and multiply it by any number of hours to get the final cost or how much he earns. So I can use this as an example and say if I want to know how much he makes in 5 hours, I would just multiply $8.46 by 5, and that is a quick way for us to scale up to determine the other price or cost. So that is why we want to know how we can find the unit rate or the constant of proportionality, because it's helpful for us to get other information once we found it. All right, I know this is a long video. If you watched the whole thing, thank you so much.